Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today to speak on the fee-free TAFE Bill 2024, and I do so with immense pride, because this is not just a nation-building piece of legislation, not just giving Australia the tools to thrive into the future to meet its skills requirements. This is a bill of uplift for Australians and their families right around the country, because by making fee-free access to hundreds of thousands of TAFE places permanent, we're giving everyday Aussies the keys to learn the skills that create livelihoods for themselves and their loved ones, regardless of their means or background. And that is life-changing for those Australians, because free access to education for disadvantaged families, that can be an absolute circuit breaker to cycles of poverty. And we have already seen thousands upon thousands of Aussies enter TAFE to learn these skills under the free fee TAFE skills agreement struck previously by the Labor government. These are invaluable outcomes that are good for people and good for the economy, by helping Australia to fix the skills shortages that desperately need to be addressed. Speaker, going back to the effect fee-free TAFE is having on families around the country, all of the Labor government's work toward levelling the playing field of education is especially close to my heart for that reason, because my community is one of the most disadvantaged metropolitan areas in the country. It's an area where, for many families, if someone wants to engage in education and training at TAFE, they often weigh the financial cost of that decision against paying their bills, against caring for their loved ones, against putting food on the table next week. And understandably, those factors can turn people away from TAFE in my community. Not acceptable from my perspective. Not acceptable from the Albanese Labor government's perspective, because no Australian should have to turn down education opportunities. No one should be giving up the chance to learn skills that will make their lives more fulfilling or more prosperous because they can't afford it. That's why Labor is changing the game with this bill. But unfortunately, we found out this week that such a state of affairs, where Aussies in challenging conditions can't afford to access education, that is acceptable to the opposition. The Liberals, in their words and their actions, have indicated they're more happy to keep everyday Aussies in that position. They're even proud of it. And I say that because the Coalition has walked away from supporting this bill. They've walked away from the provision of hundreds of thousands of free TAFE places for Australians, walked away from the opportunities that these places provide for families across the country, which this piece of legislation will set in stone. It's just shocking. Shocking that this opposition leader has turned his back on Aussies doing it tough by trying to shoot down the bill, turned his back on Aussies in places like the northern suburbs of Adelaide, on people who can find it extremely difficult to access TAFE affordably, turned his back on those Aussies by trying to make it harder for them to access education instead, by trying to make it harder for families to access opportunities to create a better life, and by trying to make it harder for people to overcome obstacles of disadvantage. It's just beyond belief that the opposition leader and his coalition colleagues would do this. And what do the Liberals have to say for themselves? How do they justify that decision? In the words of the member for Wannon, who spoke earlier this week on the bill, they did it because, and I quote, "Nothing is free in this world." In other words, those opposite believe that giving people a chance to go to TAFE, where Aussies otherwise wouldn't be able to, is a waste of money. Because of the Liberals, those people can't be trusted. Those people can't be trusted to receive a helping hand, to help them smash barriers of disadvantage. Those people can't be trusted to complete their training, which is an assertion based on the completion rates of mostly 3-year courses, when fee-free TAFE has only been around for 18 months. And that lack of trust from the Liberals, it's been heaped on Australians who are already disadvantaged. That's Aussies who might come from the suburbs of Elizabeth or Salisbury and other disadvantaged suburbs both in my electorate and around the country. That's Aussies from the regions who might have to pay a significant amount of money to travel to TAFE to complete their training. That's Aussies from a First Nations background. That's Aussies who are women. That's Aussies with a disability. That's Aussies from 3 of the most underrepresented demographics in our labour force, being told by the Coalition that they don't deserve help to enter it, being told by the opposition leader that they aren't worthy of government support. that their education, their careers, their future, if they see that coming from TAFE, that would be money going in the bin. Because the well-being of Aussies doing it tough, the aspirations of Aussies wanting to forge a future through TAFE, to learn skills that are life-changing for them and their loved ones, that just isn't worth enough to the Coalition. And hence they're saying no to the provision of 100,000 fee-free TAFE places every year. The Deputy Leader of the Opposition and Shadow Minister for Skills, she's tried to frame it as a case of bad economics. She wants to frame the Coalition argument in a way that says we're not anti-TAFE, we're not against the 508,000 Australians, many of whom are already facing disadvantage, who have enrolled in a fee-free TAFE course since the agreement was made. No, it's just that we, the Liberals, we just don't think we should pay for it. Because to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition and her Coalition colleagues, there's just not enough return on investment when a government supports Aussies to lift themselves into training and employment. The Liberals simply don't think Australia gets enough back for those efforts. What a joke that is. Because even if you did take that approach, even if you did make an Australian's access to education a monetary cost-benefit analysis, that notion still doesn't stack up. Australia suffers when people can't access education. It leaves our nation well short of the skills and training our population need to accommodate present and future growth. The Jobs and Skills Report 2024, which was released this week, makes that perfectly clear. One of its pillars calls for a much more inclusive workforce, one that is open and easily accessed by the disadvantaged groups of Australians I referred to earlier. And how do we do that? We make education more accessible so that more people can be trained to enter the workforce with the skills needed to keep Australia building onwards and upwards. You think that would be obvious to the Liberals opposite to me. But lo and behold, following 9 long years of a coalition government, a government that ripped $3 billion of funding from the VET system and TAFE, Australia now faces its worst skills shortage in 50 years, caused by the same doctrine then that's inspired them to oppose this bill before the House now. They appear determined to make that shortage worse, which is just unacceptable and frankly negligent. Because as a nation, we're in a position where we need to build 1.2 million homes within the next 5 years. We need people with the skills to do that, skills they can get at TAFE to ensure housing is affordable and accessible. We're also in a position where 44% of all new jobs created within the next 5 years will require a VET qualification at the least. People need the skills to become employable, especially if they're of lesser means, and those skills, they can get that at TAFE. It would be absolutely disastrous for Australia if they didn't have access to that training and were barred from the workforce as a result. That's a huge part of why the Labor government has put forward this bill to address the skills shortage and in turn to address both of those issues, as well as other shortages in the industries of care, defence, manufacturing, agriculture, by giving Aussies the opportunity to enter those industries, no matter who they are, where they're from, or how much they earn, to fill that skill gap. And to perk the ears up of the incredible economic managers across the coalition, doing so will prevent the untold economic damage that skills shortages will cause if ignored, as they are seeking to do so given their position on this bill. So to respond to that purely fiscal cost-benefit analysis from the Deputy Leader of the Opposition and her colleagues, assuming that was justified anyway, whatever amount of money the Liberals think they're going to save this country by opposing this bill, whether that's because they deem the 508,000 enrolments in fee-free TAFE courses so far to be wasteful spending, to quote the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, or because they don't think disadvantaged groups of Aussies can be trusted to take advantage of access to education, or because they don't think giving people the tools to get an education and get into meaningful employment is worth it. Whatever money they think is going to be saved from those notions, Australia will stand to lose far, far more than that if free access to TAFE to fix the skills shortages left unchecked. Their argument collapses even more when you consider their position against the relationship between people enrolled in VET courses and income support recipients. The Jobs and Skills Report has indicated that referring to the VET National Data Asset that of vet graduates who were on income support prior to commencing their study, 39% of them were no longer on income support after 2 years of completion. That is statistical, hard evidence of the benefit vet can have for Aussies on income support, for Aussies who are much more likely to be disadvantaged, in disadvantaged circumstances. And you would think that those opposite, for all of the wasteful spending they continue to allege of this government, for all of their crusading against the very idea of income support in general, you would think that they'd want to get Aussies doing it tough on their feet to support themselves and their loved ones, but apparently not. Their efforts on this bill are an attempt to make life for Aussies already doing it tough even tougher. As you can see, and like many on this side of the chamber, I'm struggling to comprehend why the Liberals are doing this. In that pursuit, I keep looking at the astonishing comment made by the Deputy Leader of the Opposition yesterday on the bill. She said, and I quote, "Remember this, and it's a key principle of the Liberal Party. If you don't pay for something, you don't value it." What on earth is that supposed to mean in the context of this bill? Because all I can get from that is a key principle of the Liberal Party is that they believe a government can't trust an Australian's judgment on what's valuable to them. Say you're one of the 508,000 enrolments across the country in a fee-free TAFE course. Is this key principle of the Liberal Party suggesting that someone who is in a priority demographic under the agreement, with clear and present barriers to education, is that line trying to say that this person doesn't know what they want, that they're wrong in their desire to gain valuable skills, to enter the workforce and to potentially lift themselves and others out of poverty, just because the course they're enrolling into is free? Just because a helping hand is finally there to help Aussies get around the barrier of cost, to better access our world-class education system and the workforce beyond? What an unbelievably offensive notion, a key Liberal Party principle, mind you, to be put forward by those opposite. It's a direct attack on the aspiration of Australians from challenging backgrounds, on their hopes and dreams. Even worse, that statement is a complete and utter insult to the intelligence of people coming from areas of disadvantage, from places like Davron Park, Elizabeth North, and Manapara in my electorate of Spence. It's an insult that that statement says to those top-end of town pollies of the coalition, they think they know better than the decisions you make. They think they know more about the conditions you're in than you do. How dare the Liberals prescribe their personal values onto the backs of Aussies doing it tough? How dare they project their own assertions based on their wealth, based on their privileges they enjoy in this place, onto families in our communities who live week to week, as if politicians know their lives better than they do? And how dare those opposite use this bill to question the intelligence of the Australian public, to weaponise the decision-making of Aussies just wanting to educate themselves, to take 508,000 enrolments into fee-free TAFE courses and turn it into point scoring. I'll always stand up to that, and the Albanese Labor government will always stand up with me too, because we know that enshrining fee-free TAFE in legislation, as we're doing in this bill, to build on the crucial outcomes so far under the current agreement, we know that we're giving the keys of opportunity to Aussies to help them break down barriers and thrive, as they learn the skills to give them a future they want, regardless of who they are, regardless of where they're from, regardless of what they earn, and regardless of what the opposition think of their choices. The opposition leader, his deputy, the Liberal Party, they will continue to heap disadvantage on those already disadvantaged with their position on this bill. But the Albanese Labor government will never stop fighting on that front, and I will never stop fighting to support those who need it most. I commend this bill to the House.